Hi guys, you're about to start your lesson on the last little chunk of social psychology for this year. It's the section on social change, so just to make sure that you're all ready for the video that's about to follow, can you just make sure that you've got a few bits and bobs out in front of you? So the first thing that you obviously need is your booklet on social psychology. You need to have it open onto page 61. And you also need to have in front of you, which your teacher in all likelihood has already provided you with, two sample answers. So I've just given you the little screenshot from Moodle. You can see that the two answers, if you don't already have them from your teacher, are the social change model answer that's got a stimulus attached to it, and also the one that doesn't have the stimulus. So you need all of those bits and bobs out in front of you. I would also strongly recommend that you have a highlighter pen, because we're going to be going through some chunks of text which you'll probably need to annotate. So have all of those things out in front of you. The other thing just to mention as well is you may have been given from your teacher a series of statements, a series of muddled statements. I haven't given those to my classes because they're built into this video, but your teacher might have provided you with those. So if she has given you those, just have those out in case. Okay, so once everything's out, we're ready to commence. Okay, so normally when we first start a little topic area, you'll have noticed that the first thing that we give you is usually a definition. That's because typically in the exam they're really straightforward questions, and you can see the one with social change is no different really. It would always be worth 2 marks in the exam, nice and straightforward. So in the context of social influence, what is meant by social change? So what you can see is that in your booklet on page 61 we've given you a nice straightforward definition. So social change occurs when a society as a whole adopts a new way of thinking or behaving, and that new belief system then becomes widely accepted as the norm by the vast majority of individuals in society. Now obviously there are always going to be the odd minority group that don't follow that new norm, but social change typically refers to when a society as a whole has adopted or accepted a new way of thinking. So as we've said then, when we experience social change, that is when the majority of society adopts a new way of thinking. So they've got a new belief system regarding a particular area of society, or possibly even a group of individuals. Now that often has a knock-on effect and changes the way that they behave towards that particular topic matter, or if it is a group of people in question, then it can often change the way that we act towards those people. Now that behaviour then becomes accepted as the norm. So on the right hand side of this screen here, you can see several examples of social change from history. Now the two examples at the top you may not be as familiar with, but they're the two that we're going to focus on a little bit later in this lesson. So we've got the suffragette movement, which was obviously a massive area of social change, getting votes for women, and we've got the civil rights movement. What we've also got on this screen that you might be a little bit more familiar with is the gay marriage legislature, which obviously was only recently passed last year. Gay marriage, homosexual relationships are now very much regarded as the norm. We've also got the smoking ban. So that again in recent years has come heavily into play, with a lot of public places now banning smoking. Smoking has fallen in its popularity. We will look in this topic area at just how that has happened. And then you can also see in the bottom right hand corner as well, we've got a little reference to recycling. Now further on in the lesson I'm going to give you a little bit more information as to recycling and how that social change has been brought about. But for now we just need to know the definition, and then we're going to look at exactly what you would be asked to include if you were to get an exam question in this area. As we've already established, social change happens or has happened throughout history, and there are many, many examples that we can quote. But the thing to mention here is that social change is a very gradual process. It does not happen very rapidly. There are very, very few examples of social change which have been brought about in a very short space of time. Often social change occurs over a space of years, often decades. If we think about the movement towards homosexual relationships and the acceptance of homosexual relationships, that has taken decades. Since the 1950s, there's been a gradual progression. During the 1950s, homosexuality was still regarded as a mental illness, that you could still be detained in a psychiatric hospital if you were declared as being a homosexual. So that element, that social change in the way that people think towards that particular type of relationship has not happened overnight. It has taken years and years and years to get to that point. So when we're thinking about social change, and for this particular area of your examination, you've got to focus in on how the social change is brought about. So what can we do to actually change the way that people think and change people's belief systems? Now you can see here that the two main tools that are used in a social change movement are education, so to provide people with knowledge on a minority opinion, and also then ultimately to try and persuade them that that new belief system is the correct way of thinking. So we've got to educate them as to what the alternative way of thinking is, and then gradually try to persuade them that that is an acceptable way to think, that is an acceptable belief system to hold. So what we've got here is a very quick example. Everybody knows that for a very long period of time, the earth was regarded as being flat. Over time, over a number of years, several things happened. Several people tried to educate the majority, the rest of the world, that the earth was in fact not flat, that it was spherical in its shape. Now that social change has led us to everyone believing that the earth is that shape, okay, is spherical. So we're going to look at how that process kind of takes place over years and years, and how do we ultimately get to the point where we do accept a new belief system.